Sup everyone, Dark Scream 217 here, and it's time for another spoiler talk. Thinking about, I need to call it something else, but I can't think of anything creative at the moment. But it's going to be a spoiler addendum to Loopon the Third Mystery of Mamo, which, if you haven't seen my review, I still encourage to check the movie out, especially the discotheque version, since that one has 4 different dubs for you to watch, and each dub has its own mixed bag of quality. Most had some good moments, had some bad moments, etc., etc. But anyways, this is for those who probably already have seen the film and want a more in-depth look at my thoughts of what I thought about this movie. Well, I've actually seen it 5 times. I've seen the Zenigata dub twice because I wanted to show that movie to a friend. And since he also seen Loopon through the Adult Swim TV series, he wanted to watch it in that language course, which I have no issues with. I mean, I've mentioned some things with the dub of the Zenigata dub I didn't like the fact that they completely updated to make it feel more 21st century, even though the film was made in 1978. And a bunch of other things, like a few one-liners that were almost all the scripts try to be a little more comedic, but they don't stay that close to the original script. So Zenigata was no exception. But other than that, I did really enjoy the Zenigata dub of Mystery of Mamo. I'm going to start off this little discussion by replying to one of the comments that was made on my video a month ago when I announced that I was going to review Mystery of Mamo. Cyril Laram III said that the plot to this film is too confusing to follow, to which I disagree. Maybe it's because I've seen it a whole bunch of times in different formats, but I did not find this plot that complicated to follow at all. There were a few things that, I had questions for first time around, but they got answered by the second viewing. And there is one other thing that I will discuss about later at the end of this video. But other than that, very easy plot to follow. I mean, the film is in itself is only like about 100 minutes in length anyway, so it's a really quick so it is really quick and comprehensible. So the film opens with Loopon being executed in Transylvania. However, later in the film, it was fully outright revealed to be a clone of Loopon that Mamo created using a DNA sample from him, which I'm pretty sure he got from Fujiko, whom she was under employment with throughout this film. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that Loopon was made to be a distraction, or it really was that flawed of a clone he got himself caught, or maybe he was used as an execution so the real Loopon could get the Mandrake route from Transylvania. After the credits, though, Loopon is in Egypt looking for the Philosopher's Stone. And that in itself was a really great scene, full of, it was really high-paced, full of a bunch of guards, and then Zenigata himself leading the chase, or halfway leading the chase. He was overrunning someone's authority. And it was pretty exciting to watch. And even first introduced Goemon in this film, how much of a badass he is. And yeah, that was a pretty exciting scene. Now, when they did get the Philosopher's Stone, they were curious about why Fujiko needed it. And so they planted a fake Philosopher's Stone, which is actually a bug, so they could hear in on who the client is. However, Mamo was smarter than that, and he took out the bug, and later on, the Mamo sent a helicopter to gun down Loopon in the game for the stone. Now, this scene was kind of ridiculous. When I first saw it, it was just a little ridiculous because that helicopter, if I'm not mistaken, was like closing on Lupon's, Jigen, and Goemon sights, and it was shooting like effing crazy. And it was hitting everyone else around them except for those 3 guys. They had the firing accuracy of a stormtrooper plus unnecessary casualties. Now, I don't know if the pedestrians got around them did get shot, but, well, if they did, you wouldn't tell because they did not animate bullet holes when they got knocked on their asses. But that in itself led to another chase sequence that was also really, really fun to watch. It never got old watching it over and over again. My favorite part would have to be when Loopon drove down to the sewers, and they thought the helicopter couldn't get to him there, but it did. Granted, it wasn't a perfect fly for the helicopter. It really was bumping into the walls a little, but it wasn't breaking apart. However, Goemon was already at the sewer. He cuts up the helicopter. Then the helicopter explode. Massive explosion all over the sewer. However, Lupin and his company were able to survive. Then Fujiko drives up, tries to convince Lupin to give her the stone so that no more harm can be done to him. But then Lupin just took her car and just threw her off to the side, and they drove outside the city limits to where the police were getting involved, and of course Zenigata's there, like always. And then this gigantic ass red and blue 18-wheeler shows up and just starts running down the police cars and is just out for Lupin's blood. Eventually, Lupin found an exit off the main road. The 18-wheeler did drive off the cliff, and they managed to get away. But then Mamo's henchman Flinch was driving an airplane and bombed Fujiko's car. I need to rewind a little bit, though. During that chase scene, guardrails were damaged, and Lupin drove off of the guardrail. This gets crazy. This is physics defying, but it was a little too awesome for me to not care. He drives off of the road, but then he two wheels on the guardrail, drives up to it perfectly, and gets back on the main road. That's crazy. All right, I'm not trying to do a plot-by-plot synopsis. I was just trying to explain some things that I got carried away. But anyways, I want to talk a little bit about the villain. Mamo, whose real name is Howard Lockwood, or in the Toho and manga dubs, he's Howard Fuse. I don't know why the name changed. I mean, his name is already Western sounding, so... Well, anyways, it's really not that important. Like, he's just commonly known as Mamo at this point. His real name was only brought up like 2 or 3 times in the entire film. So he has a really creepy design to him. According to the DVD liner notes, his appearance is based off of Paul Williams and Phantom of the Paradise, but they also wanted to make him look like an old man and a child at the same time. So of course to me he looked more like an old man. I saw the child at first, but at the same time, because of how short he was, I could totally see like old. I've seen a lot of old man designs in anime. I could totally see that. See more of an old man in him than I do as a child person. But he does have a little bit of a creepy design. Light purple suit was a little much, as well as the big hair. But he did have like a sense of intimidation to him. But he has a god complex since he's been living for this long. He's also a geneticist who's responsible for cloning. Hence why there's a clone of Loopon in Transylvania, and earlier in the during the scene where Loopon broke out of the cage in Mamo's Caribbean base, he actually stumbles upon both Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler. So later on, Zenigata finds Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher. And yeah, so he was also cloning worldly figures, but that's the only 3 worldly figures we see, and we don't see any more of that because later on in the film, the U.S. government was able to track down his base, and then they just did a freaking carpet bomb, blowing up the whole place in shreds, all of it in smoke. Yeah, the U.S. government does get involved in this plot too, because Mamo is not only like a geneticist with a god complex. He is according to the movie, he is like the richest man in the world. Hence why he was able to get the money just to do all this. He was also seen as a threat to the world, a threat that doesn't want to be made public. Because at the end of the film, like the Henry Kissinger parody was informed that he had to kill everyone involved in the Mamo project, including his left hand man, Agent Gordon, as they were blowing up his other base, and I believe it was in South America or in Colombia, the part of Colombia. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure it's one of those locations. So, Mamo's main motivation is to basically wipe out the rest of the world and recreate it in his own image. He was going to do this with a shitload of missiles that he had on his base in South America. And he promised Loopon and Fujiko immortal life. Loopon thought it was complete shit. Fujiko was actually Fujiko, on the other hand, was all for it, and the reason why she was getting Loopon involved in all this, and also involved some weird backstabbing and stuff as well, but the reason why she wanted to do this is because she really did, in fact, legitimately love Loopon to where she wanted to be with him forever. So his idea of immortality is just cloning himself. That's obviously how he survives. In fact, one of the other film titles that I didn't mention in my review, because in itself is kind of a spoiler, is that in Japan it was simply called Lupin the Third: The Motion Picture. But since other Lupin films came out, they wanted to give it a title to help get itself more recognized, other than just Lupin the Third: The movie. So in Japan, it's called Lupin the Third versus the Clone. Since cloning is a kind of a huge theme in this film, anyways. So I really did not have a problem following this plot, especially through multiple viewings. Maybe it's because I've seen it a whole bunch of times in a row, but yeah, it was really easy for me to follow. Another thing, I have a few other things to mention, but I don't know what the next thing I want to bring up. And I guess the next thing I want to bring up is Zenigata himself. What really interests me about this film is that Zenigata nowhere was aware of. I don't even know he was aware about the villain's existence. Like, he was so obsessed with capturing Loopon in this film particularly that he did not know about the bigger things in scope in regards to what was going on with Loopon. All he cared about was just capturing the son of a bitch. And he does not know the stuff he was involved in. I mean, nothing, and the stuff that was clued in on him, he really didn't care much about. He didn't know, that chase scene I mentioned with the 18-wheeler. It did knock Zenigata's the vehicle Zenigata was in. It knocked him off of the road. And Zenigata gets out of the car as he's falling, by the way, and he's just laughing about it because he's not completely aware that this is not a cop vehicle, that this is probably something else, and it's probably gonna fucking crush Lupin to like a pancake. And he's just laughing his ass off because he knows it's after Lupin. But he not once has he brought up why was that 18-wheeler on the road, why was it crushing other cop cars and knocking it off the road. And then later on in the film, he also ends up in the Caribbean, and he was curious as to why there was the Caribbean was getting bombed, but he never really asked any more questions. Again, all he was just really obsessed about was just finding, capturing Loopon. He tried to tie a boat on their getaway speedboat, but then of course it was either they rigged it to where it tied to the wrong boat, or Zenigata made a huge mistake. But that scene was pretty hilarious when he thought he was able to catch up with him, but he wasn't able to. And then later on in the film, after the big Caribbean scene, he gets found by his superior officer. I believe it was a chief or a commissioner. They kind of switch between the two dubs, and he told him that he had to get off the case because of because of the fact that he was more involved with Mamo. And since he was a threat to security, according to the governments, America and I believe Russia especially, he just wasn't allowed to go near Loopon. But Zenigata said, "No, I'm the only one who can capture Loopon. I gotta do this." So he just storms off and chases him down South America. So I thought that was a little interesting touch up, that the rival character in the series was just not, he did not have to, there was no part of him where he was like forced to team up with Loopon to help him stop Mamo or anything. That they actually almost kept him exclusive to his own perspectives. And if you were to watch this film from Zenigata's perspective, you wouldn't know much of the stuff Loopon was involved in either. Complete breath of fresh air and contrast to Castle Cagliostro, to where Zenigata was teaming up with Loopon to take down the villain in that film. So that was something I really liked. Another thing that I noticed is that Loopon never pulled out his Walter P-38 in this entire film. Almost everyone else has pulled out a gun. Jigen's pulled out his firearm. Zenigata's pulled out his firearm too when he was trying to shoot Loopon in the sky in Transylvania. Even Mamo's got a flintlock pistol later on, but he never used his gun. The only types of weapons that Loopon used in the film was he used some makeshift explosives before at the beginning of the final act of the film. Some makeshift grenades that he used to sabotage Mamo's missiles. And another weapon that he used was Goemon's broken sword. Earlier in the film, during the Caribbean scene again, Mamo's henchman Flinch was confronted Lupon's gang and was about to kill him. However, he ends up fighting Goemon, and during the fight, everything was fine and dandy. Like, Flinch was swinging frantically, but Goemon was just casually dodging everything that was thrown to him. Goemon uses his sword. He thought he got a good clean cut of him, but it turns out Flinch was wearing really heavy body armor, and according to the Toho, Streamline, and Manga dub, that the armor is so indestructible that the only thing that could cut it is a laser sword. Basically, you need a lightsaber. So Goemon goes for another cut. However, Flinch's body armor did not cover everything. It did not cover his head, obviously, because Flinch's head got cut up. And the way they show that scene too, Goemon's sword was already kind of scratched up from cutting the body armor, but after he cut Flinch's head, the tip of the blade broke off, which really upset Goemon. And Flinch thought that his head was yet to be shown sliced, but Flinch thought he had this battle won. And then from his perspective, from a first-person perspective, you see the screen like break into like three perpendicular places, which is completely inconsistent to what you eventually see. By the way, his skull, like the top half of his skull, was on one side. The middle part of his skull, where the eyes are, were going in the opposite direction. But his eyes weren't even cut up. It was just the top and center half of his skull. But Flint tries to put himself together, but he screams in pain, falls. Obviously, he's dead. Goemon is so upset, even though Jigen thanked him for saving their lives. Goemon said that the reason why the sword broke was because of his skill. Now, in the manga dub, he says that, but he also mentions that he has to commit seppuku. That he just has to kill himself out because he dishonored himself. And Jigen says, I'm not kidding, almost verbatim, he goes, yeah, you're right. Great support there, Jigen. Well, obviously, Goemon doesn't. But also in the two previous dubs, the Toho and Streamline dub, when Loopon was asking about Goemon's whereabouts, Jigen says that Goemon mentioned to him that he doesn't want to see them ever again. Even though that's not true. Later in the Loopon series, Goemon's always there, which is why I was actually okay with Geneon changing that line to where Jigen just mentions the same thing the audience already knows to Loopon. But anyways, Loopon had Goemon's blade. Like, Jigen just tossed it on the ground. Loopon picked it up. But way later in the film, during the climax, when Mamo was trying to run away with Fujiko, Loopon was chasing him down, but Mamo was using a bunch of laser traps to try to disintegrate Loopon. And Loopon was upset because he didn't have a weapon to fight himself with. But when he reached into his pocket, he cut himself on his finger, and he decided to go back down to the hallway, past the hallway. And Mamo was going to blast him with the laser traps again. And Mamo mentions that the Loopon that died in Transylvania was in fact a clone. I have to back up a little to explain this. When Mamo was explaining how he was living through all these years and was responsible for some of the world events, he actually tries to tease Loopon on whether or not he was the original or the clone. Maybe the real Loopon died in Transylvania. Not something that's really a big deal or even brought up all that much. Nothing, and it's something that doesn't even tear away at Loopon at all. However, I guess this is just something to make the audience feel better, not have them speculate or anything like that. Mamo just flat out says, "Okay, before I kill you, I should let you die with a peace of mind, knowing that the person who died in Transylvania was just my clone." So he tries to hit. So he hits him with the He tries to hit him with the laser. Loopon pulls out Zenigata's blade. It reflects. And it reflects right into Mamo's face. Mamo is like burning for like 2 minutes, and then he's just nothing but ash. Then the thing that really bugs, something I still can't follow or understand, but it doesn't ruin the entire film for me, is that Loopon thought that was the actual final clone of Mamo that he finally killed. Also earlier Loopon encountered more imperfect clones of Mamo, and it turns out that his cloning process had a degenerate progressions. As more and more clones come out, the more imperfect they were, and Mamo was pretty upset about that. But then it just gets a little weird. It's later revealed that Mamo is, in fact, his true form is a giant brain. It's a giant brain. And the clones are just bodies he just robotically controls through the microchips in their brains. And I'm just, okay, they mention he's a geneticist, but he never really brought up how he was able to, like, make his brain grow over time like this. Had he mentioned something about it, I would have been like, oh, okay. But I'm just, like, blown away by this big twist. Yeah, I just thought that was a crazy, ridiculous twist. And, they didn't really do much explaining on how Mamo became a giant-ass brain. But But that twist, while really bizarre and almost out of place, did not ruin that film for me as much as other bad plot twists do. So, Mamo was already tied. Mama's brain was tied to a rocket, and he said he was gonna leave in some distant place. He was probably gonna seek civilization on life and then come back to Earth at a later time where he can rightfully rule this place as a god. Loopon manages to stick an explosive on the glass container, and Mamo, completely unaware of it, he just lifts off anyway. And one thing I really did like about the scene where Mamo's rocket explodes. Most sci-fi films and novels totally ignore the fact that there is supposed to be no sound in space. And another thing they also ignore is that explosions don't work the same way they work here on Earth. It isn't as big and fiery. It's actually supposed to be like a quick little flash and that's it. But this film actually acknowledges that science because you don't hear anything when the rocket explodes in any of the four dubs, and it is a really beautiful flash. It's actually a really nice looking effect, and then you see Mama's brain slowly drift off to the sun, which, you know, out of play. If you were to like show that scene out of context from the rocket launch to his brain drifting off his sun, good luck trying to tell people, yeah, that was from a Loopon movie. But yeah, I really did like that scene. I thought it was a really beautiful looking scene, as disturbing as that sounds, because that's like the death of one of the characters. But yeah, it looked really nice. So at the end of the film, Mamo's base is in shreds. He's looking for Fujiko. Fujiko was unconscious, but it turns out she was just, pretending to be unconscious because Zenigata slaps a cuff to Lupon's ankle, and he was apparently buried in the ground. And this scene's actually pretty hilarious. I love this scene. And he's like he uses the other end of the cuff onto Zenigata's ankle, and Lupon's like, well, no, that's not me. I'm not the real Loopon. I'm just a clone. And Zenigata's like, I don't care. As long as there's one Loopon the third, I will chase him down to the depths of hell. And he looked like a psychopath with those eyes, man. So Zenigata's like proudly happy that he captured Loopon. Loopon kisses Fujiko. But then the U.S. military got aware of Mama's location again and starts bombing the place like crazy, except probably twice as much as compared to the Caribbean scene. And Jigen comes to rescue through an airplane, but Fujiko ends up getting on the ride instead of Loopon. Oh yeah, something else I needed to mention about this film. The relationship with Jigen, Goemon, and Loopon. In this film, Goemon and Jigen basically had it up to here with, when I say here, I'm just past my head. Raising my arm past my head so you guys don't see me without camera. But they basically had it with Loopon trusting Fujiko after the backstabbing she's done, and she continues to do so. When they tried to get to the safe house after the chase scene, it was already busted, and they got really pissed. Loopon promises that Fujiko was his history, so after they traversed through the desert and found a house with a few beans and supplies, Loopon sees Fujiko again, suggesting that they should. She looked damaged and tortured. She even claimed to be tortured. Lupin suggested that he should bring Fujiko inside with them, and both Goemon and Jigen were like, no, that girl's trouble, no. That's probably why I like Jigen the most, because I can actually, because even I was going, no, at the movie, no. I've got something planned for you, no. Spoiler, he drug food and he got carried off into the Caribbean base. But Goemon leaves, then Jigen leaves, but then he tries to come back to save Loopon, but Loopon was already being taken off by a plane. Then Jigen and Goemon get taken by the U.S. Navy to see if they know where Mama was. But then they found out that the clue Fujiko left had disappearing ink that could only be seen if you dip water in it, and that's how they were able to find his base. So they ended up saving him in the Caribbean. Jigen shoots Mamo in the head that time. But then during the South America scene, Goemon already left because I'm the damaged sword. But Jigen, he argued that he did not want to confront Mamo because he thought they were out of Mamo's league. He was way too powerful. They even said because an earlier scene after Mamo takes Fujiko with him, Loopon taunts him. He's like, "Oh yeah, if you're really a god, I want you to perform a miracle or something." And Mamo's like, "Okay." Couple seconds later, earthquake, and completely leveled the city they were in. And Jigen was like, "Well, he's not a god, but he's obviously way too much for us. I would rather live this one out." And Lupon's like, "All right, so you're not coming, see ya." And he just walks off. Jigen actually shoots next to him, tell him that he's basically telling him that he's an idiot, that he's risking for his life for Fujiko again. And Lupon's just like, "Whatever, but you don't know anything about love." And he just walks off. However, as already mentioned by Jigen before, he comes in to save his ass anyway, or tries to save his ass. So the film actually ends with Zenigata and Loopon three-leg running from a bunch of explosions, and the credits roll. And I just found that to be a pretty hilarious way to end the film. Completely fits with the nature of Loopon. Really fun to watch. And it's just crazy amazing. So those are my thoughts on Mystery of Mamo, or at least the plot. Originally, I was contemplating the idea of discussing each of the dubs more and more here, but I don't want these videos to last forever, and I don't know if a lot of people will see this spoiler video of Mystery of Mamo anyway, so... But if you have heard everything I said and really enjoyed it, good. And if you haven't seen the movie yet and still listen to the spoiler, I sure hope this motivates you to see the movie, encourage you to see the movie more. But those are my thoughts on Mystery Mamo. It is, quality-wise, pretty much up there with Castle Cagliostro. Maybe more so, since this is more faithful to Loopon than Castle Cagliostro was. So, that's all I gotta say. My next review is going to be a pretty negative one. Master of Martial Arts. Just because I do need to balance out the good with some of the bad. I have been doing a lot of positive anime reviews. Not a lot of people get on me for that. Actually, no one gets on me for that. But I think I should put at least one negative review out there. Master Martial Arts. Oh dear God, it's half pain. But I have it's gonna get worse down the road. So that's all I gotta say. Leave a comment if you wish, and this is Dark Scream 217 signing out.